Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're getting into the Book of Changes. You probably know it as the I Ching, maybe the Zui.
Hmm.
It's, ancient, often really misunderstood. And our goal today basically is to cut through some of that confusion.
Yeah, there's a lot of it.
Both the old confusion and, surprisingly, some very modern confusion, too. We want to pull out some genuinely useful, maybe surprising insights that you can actually think about, maybe apply. So, yeah, let's journey into this pretty profound text.
Sounds good. And
Ah,
it is profound. I mean, the I Ching has lasted, what, 3,000 years? That's remarkable.
incredible.
But yeah, over that time, it's definitely gathered its share of, well, let's call it nonsense, even drivel, as our source puts it.
Right.
So our aim is really to help you, the listener, see how this ancient book might offer some practical wisdom today. And we'll do that by, looking critically at the very different ways people try to interpret it.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Because there's this kind of curious modern challenge, isn't there? You mentioned modern confusion.
Hmm.
There's this group of current academic scholars trying to interpret it without recourse to speculation. What does that actually mean? And what happens when they try that?
Well, what it means in practice is they limit themselves, like with great rigor, they say,
Okay.
to only very specific, often limited historical materials. But the source material we're drawing on today calls these deeply flawed methodologies.
Flawed, huh?
Yeah. It's like they're trying to achieve this pure objectivity by um, essentially hobbling themselves, restricting the data they'll even look at.
And the result of this super rigorous hobbled approach.
Well, honestly,
Yeah.
it leads to translations that are, well, they're pretty bizarre.
Bizarre how?
Imagine reading texts that are filled with things like dancing elephants.
Dancing elephants, seriously.
Seriously, dancing elephants, grunting hamsters, ripping rats, bunched fat meats, feeding birds, rewarded piglets, maybe the weirdest,
Huh?
twitching and tittering captives everywhere.
Wow, okay. That sounds odd.
It's very odd. And the kicker is, these scholars seem genuinely convinced that, yes, this is how the early Chinese actually thought and talked.
Ah,
And what's maybe a bit concerning, beyond just how strange it sounds, is that these scholars, they tend to praise each other as experts for this kind of work.
right, the footnotes look impressive.
Exactly. Impressive-looking sets of footnotes. But the real downside, according to our source, is that it's actually diverting resources for more useful pursuits.
Meaning?
Meaning it actively obscures the really deep and practical wisdom in the I Ching. It makes it seem like just weird ancient stuff.
Can you give an example of that, how it obscures things?
Sure, take the character few too.
Yeah.
Okay. Traditionally, for centuries, it's been understood as meaning something like truth or confidence.
Okay, makes sense.
But these modernist scholars, they rigidly translate it only as prisoner of war.
Prisoner of war, that's quite different.
Very different. Now, to be fair, few too did mean prisoner of war on some really old Shang oracle bones and early Zhou bronzes, before about 770 BCE.
Ah, okay. So there's a historical basis.
There is. But the argument that just because Fu meant X back then, it could not possibly have meant Y later or even at the same time. That's where the logic breaks down. Our source calls it a particularly fallacious step
Why fallacious?
because Chinese, like most languages, is polysemous. Words have multiple meanings. Think about run in English. You can run a race, run a company, run a fever, a run in your stocking.
Right, right. Context is key.
Exactly. So insisting on only one very early meaning is just, well, it misses the richness and flexibility of the language.
And this problem, this narrow glossing, it doesn't just happen with single words, does it? It affects bigger things, too.
Absolutely. It extends
Right.
right to the names of the hexagrams themselves, the Guaming.
How so?
Well, the modernists often try to reduce these names to very specific concrete events or phenomena, like they'll argue hexagram 01 is a specific dragon constellation, or Gua 25 is a particular epidemic, or Gua 55 is definitely about an eclipse they can date.
Which sounds very precise, I guess.
It sounds precise, but our sources argue it requires much bending and twisting of the actual text to make it fit. The understanding presented is that these hexagram names were primarily mnemonic handles.
Mnemonic, like memory aids.
Exactly. Little tags to help you remember which hexagram was which, not to strictly define or circumscribe the content. Because really, each of those 64 names is meant to be a stand-in for 1/64th of the human experience. That's a much bigger scope than just one constellation or one epidemic, right?
Yeah, much bigger. That makes more sense.
And, if you step back, this whole issue, this slightly misguided quest for pure objectivity, It's not totally unique to I Ching studies.
Oh, you see it elsewhere.
Yeah, you see similar pitfalls in some areas of social science. Like some anthropologists, in trying so hard not to project their own views, end up suppressing their own assumptions, sometimes leading to strange interpretations of other cultures. There was even that famous spoof.
Oh, you mean body ritual among the Nasarima?
That's the one.
Yeah.
It perfectly skewers how easy it is to make another culture seem like sacrifice-obsessed primitives who are totally incapable of metaphor or humor just by describing familiar things in unfamiliar objective terms.
Right. Nasarima is American backwards.
Exactly. And sadly, this tendency to view the ancients or other cultures as somehow fundamentally primitive or thinking in ways unrecognizably different from us, well, our source calls it cultural centrism and snobbery.
So the idea is the people who wrote the Zui weren't fundamentally different thinkers.
Pretty much. They weren't working with Australopithecine brains, as the author colorfully puts it. They were intelligent, complex human beings dealing with the same basic human condition.
Okay, so if that modernist approach is, well, flawed and leads to dancing elephants, and if assuming the ancients were primitive is also wrong, what is a better way? How do we get to the real I Ching?
Well, that's the core question. And the author whose work we're primarily drawing on for this deep dive took a pretty exhaustive approach to find out.
How exhaustive?
We're talking studying more than 200 works in English on the Book of Changes.
Wow, 200.
Yep. And that included, a lot of New Age knockoffs, gimmick books, and flights of fancy, stuff most academics might just dismiss.
But this author didn't dismiss them.
No. And here's the really dedicated part. They apparently read everything twice.
Twice, even the gimmick books.
Even the gimmick books. Just to be absolutely comprehensive to make sure nothing was missed.
That is serious dedication. So what did they conclude from all that reading?
Well, a key point is the tragedy that often good minds, in ignoring the surrounding drivel, often ignore the real I Ching as well. They throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Ah, okay. So don't just dismiss everything that looks weird.
Right. And this author's understanding of divination itself is quite different from simple fortune-telling. It's not about predicting a fixed future. It's more that the I Ching describes the landscape.
Describes the landscape.
Yeah, it provides a map of where you stand in a given situation. And the point isn't just to know the map, but to help you adapt.
Adapt. How?
Well, often we face situations that are vastly bigger than we are.
Yeah.
Right? Things we can't directly change.
Sure.
In those cases, what can be changed most easily is our response to it, our attitude, our choices within that landscape. That's where the I Ching's guidance comes in, finding the optimum attitude, making the best choice available.
That makes a lot of sense. It's more about navigating than predicting.
Exactly. And this fits with how the Zui itself seems to have evolved.
How did it evolve?
Well, the evidence suggests that around 770 BCE, its readership started to widen. It went beyond just the Zhou royal court to the broader literate class.
Okay, more people reading it.
Right. And then by about 602 BCE, there seems to have been a shift in how it was perceived and used.
Yeah.
It moved from being primarily seen as a Bronze Age diviner's oracle
Right, the original function maybe.
to becoming more of a book of wisdom and philosophy, of ethics, and of statecraft.
So did the text itself change dramatically then? Was it rewritten?
Not necessarily. The key point our source makes is that this was more a change in perception and usage, a kind of rhetorical shift, because more people knew about it and were using it in discussions and arguments in thinking about governing. It wasn't likely a wholesale rewrite or a significant change of content. The core text remained, but its application broadened.
Got it. So given that understanding the focus on adaptation, the evolution and usage, what principles did this author use to actually interpret the text?
They laid out a few key principles. First, something called the law of parsimony.
Parsimony. Like keeping it simple.
Sort of. It means starting with the most straightforward, concrete meaning first. Then, if needed, consider interpretations involving magic and myth, then maybe metaphor or analogy, and then finally, abstract ethical philosophy. But you only go as far up that ladder as you need to until the translation is worth writing down. Don't jump straight to abstract philosophy if a concrete meaning works and makes sense.
Okay, start simple, build complexity only if necessary. What else?
Second, and this is huge, the crucial role of context. The author argues really strongly that the broader notion of context is the dimension most glaringly absent in those modernist translations we talked about.
Right, the polysemous words need context.
Exactly. And often, context is the only clue to the meaning of a text in classical Chinese. Ignoring it is like trying to read a sentence with half the words missing.
Makes sense. Any other principles?
Yeah, a fundamental working hypothesis. Assume that the text of the Zhui is meaningful and was intended by its authors to provide some form of useful information. And also assume that the text hangs together as a whole.
So don't assume it's just random gibberish or disconnected fragments.
Precisely. This approach avoids looking for overly simplistic solutions and respects the text as a coherent work.
And underpinning all this, there's an assumption about the people who wrote it, right? You mentioned they weren't primitive.
Yes, absolutely. The author works from the assumption of a common substratum of the humanity that we've all shared for over 100 millennia. Meaning, we assume the ancient Chinese who created the I Ching were rational people, capable of complex thought, metaphor, humor. Basically, people fundamentally like us, just in a different time and culture.
Not some alien mindset.
Not at all. And what's really fascinating here is the author actually shares some personal experience related to this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they mention spending time with actual primitive tribal shamans, the real deal, not the fancy kind you might pay a lot for today.
Okay.
And these shamans, despite living in societies maybe even less complex than the zoo court, were found to be neither superstitious nor slow-witted.
Really?
Yeah. Instead, they were rather articulate and actually quite adept at counseling their people.
Counseling, like therapy or guidance.
Exactly. Which leads the author to suggest that maybe the Yizhi's original core function was primarily as a counselor, a tool for guidance and self-understanding.
That's a powerful idea.
It is. And it implies that we should expect to find really penetrating psychological insights in the Zhui, not just obscure rituals or weird pronouncements.
Okay, so this approach, assuming coherence, respecting context, seeing it as a tool for adaptation and counsel, it sounds much richer. So what does this mean for us? How does this unlock practical insights we can actually use?
Great question. Let's move beyond just the method and look at the results. What kind of wisdom emerges?
Yeah, let's get concrete.
Yeah.
But first, thinking about those flawed interpretations, our source mentions a couple of classic allegories that seem really relevant here.
Ah, yes. Good point. Like the blind men and the elephant.
Exactly. Explain that one.
Well, it's the old story, right?
Yeah.
Several blind men touch different parts of an elephant. One touches the leg and says, an elephant is like a tree trunk. Another touches the tusk, says, no, it's like a spear. Another the tail. It's like a rope.
And they're all partly right, but totally wrong about the whole thing.
Precisely. It's a perfect illustration of how these narrow, limited perspectives, like just focusing on prisoner of war for FU2, or seeing only an eclipse in hexagram 55, can lead to vastly different, really incomplete, and sometimes, yeah, comical misunderstandings of the whole reality. They grab one weird bit and miss the entire elephant of the I Ching's wisdom.
It really fits the modernist critique. And the other one, the emperor's new clothes.
Ah, another classic. That one shows how the fear of appearing stupid can create this kind of mass self-deception. Right?
Yeah, everyone pretends to see the amazing clothes because they don't want to look foolish.
Exactly. And nobody dares to state the obvious truth that the emperor is naked. It speaks to how maybe some scholars might cling to flawed interpretations because everyone else in their circle praises them, and they don't want to be the one to say, hang on, this doesn't actually make sense. They fear looking stupid more than they seek the truth.
That's a pretty sharp critique. Okay, so bearing those pitfalls in mind, the dangers of narrowness and intellectual conformity, let's get into some actual wisdom from the I Ching unlocked by this deeper approach.
Okay, sounds good. Let's take those four terms that often appear, especially in hexagram 1. Yuan Heng Li Zen.
Right. Sometimes just translated vaguely as like sublime success, furthering through perseverance.
Yeah, or just generic good fortune. But the understanding we're exploring here is much more specific and, I think, more useful. It clarifies these terms as representing the kind of advantage that you work or train for, the reward you merit, the worth you earn.
Ah, so it's not just random luck, it's earned.
Exactly. It's about developing your character, having a prepared mind. It reminds me of Pastor saying, chance favors the prepared mind. That's the vibe. It's advantage you build.
I like that. Much more actionable. What else?
Okay, how about hexagram 02, Kun, which is often translated as the receptive, or maybe better here, accepting. The core image is often the mare's persistence. And the wisdom here is really interesting. The path of least resistance is often the path of optimum gain.
That sounds almost counterintuitive in our push harder culture.
It can be. The text suggests that trying too hard to lead is confusion, But to follow is to learn mastery. It's about yielding, adapting, being receptive, because acceptance keeps all of the options open. It doesn't mean being passive, but being intelligently responsive.
Follow to learn mastery. Interesting. Okay, give me another.
Let's look at hexagram 15 Akina, often translated as modesty, but maybe authenticity captures it better.
Authenticity. Okay. How is that understood here?
It's explicitly not about self-effacement or feeling shame for being imperfect. That's false modesty.
Yeah.
True authenticity, in this view, is to know things as they are, even if they are great.
Know things as they are, even if they're great.
Yeah. It means acknowledging your strengths, your accomplishments, without arrogance, but also without false humility. Just seeing clearly. And this kind of diligent modesty, this authenticity, it gets results and actually inspires awe in others, far more than pretending to be less than you are.
That's a subtle but important distinction, knowing things as they are. Okay, maybe one or two more.
How about hexagram 38, Kui, estrangement or opposition? This one offers fascinating advice on dealing with difference.
Oh, what's the takeaway?
It suggests that enjoying diversity overcomes differences better than making both sides the same. Don't try to force conformity. Appreciate the contrast.
Enjoy diversity.
Yeah. And there's even a line hinting that sometimes adversaries can become allies. Something about a tiger, their kind eats tender flesh, suggesting even a dangerous force might be useful if understood correctly. It's about finding common ground, even amidst opposition.
Wow, that's complex. Okay, last one.
Let's do hexagram 40,
Yeah.
release or deliverance. The central metaphor is often an archer releasing an arrow, and the wisdom is about letting go of burdens. Specifically, it emphasizes that resentment and blame are burdens we carry. Forgiveness, therefore, isn't primarily for the other person. Forgiveness is given for their sake, meaning for your own sake, to release yourself from that weight. The ultimate goal is clear. Let go.
Let go. That's powerful and very practical. These are much deeper than dancing elephants.
Exactly. And you see how they offer psychological insight, guidance for navigating life.
Absolutely. And you mentioned humor earlier. And ambiguity. How does that play in?
Right. It seems the Zuli authors weren't always deadly serious. They sometimes used irony, caricature, even parody, or just lightheartedness.
Really? In an ancient divination text?
It appears so. And they also use what our source calls vertical ambiguity. This means a single line might have multiple layers of meaning. It could be read literally, metaphorically, philosophically, depending on the context and the person consulting it.
Can you give an example?
Sure. There's a line in hexagram 01, line 4, dancing across the deep. Depending on the situation, that could be lighthearted encouragement. Go for it. Or it could be a serious warning. You're playing with fire here. The ambiguity allows for nuanced guidance.
Ah, so it's not just one fixed meaning.
Right. And for humor, well, there's a line in hexagram 44, line 3, that talks about someone's rump with no skin.
Uh-huh. Okay, that's pretty blunt.
It is. And it's used as this almost comically stark image of vulnerability and exposure, illustrating really poor leadership or being in a terrible position. It's memorable because it's so vivid, maybe even darkly funny.
So it uses these techniques to teach. Okay, and briefly, what about the practical side? Like actually using it, say, with the coin oracle method?
Well, even there, the emphasis isn't on spooky magic.
Yeah.
Our source stresses that respect is key.
Respect for what?
Respect for the tools you use, like the coins or yarrow stocks, but more importantly, respect for the process itself, taking it seriously, being genuinely engaged. Because ultimately, trueness is a description of one's aim and intent. It's about your sincerity in seeking guidance.
So the ritual helps focus the mind, the intent.
That seems to be the idea. It's a tool to access your own intuition and understanding within the framework the I Ching provides.
Okay, so wrapping this all up then, it feels like the big takeaway is that the I Ching is way more than just an old fortune-telling book or, a collection of weird ancient habits.
Absolutely. It's presented as a profound book of wisdom, one that was genuinely intended to help your path through life, not just, predict lottery numbers.
Right, more guide than crystal ball.
Exactly. You could say this ancient text is designed to serve your human day.
Human Tao. What do you mean by that?
Well, think of it as our unique human capacity for vicarious trial and error. Our ability to learn from others' experiences, from stories, from reflection. The I Ching helps you do that. It helps you make mistakes in the mind, on hypothetical and theoretical stages before making them on the ground.
Learn from simulations almost. Mental simulations.
That's a great way to put it. It lets you explore possibilities and consequences mentally, guided by this ancient wisdom, so you can navigate the real world more skillfully.
That's incredibly valuable. So, a final thought for our listeners to take away from all this.
Well, drawing from our source, there's a powerful line. Minds closed too soon. Belief is a form of ignorance.
Hmm. Belief is a form of ignorance. Keep an open mind.
Exactly. And it echoes that advice often attributed to Carl Sagan, which feels very relevant to approaching the I Ching or any complex system of thought.
What's the advice?
Basically, spin more than one hypothesis. When you encounter something, think of all the different ways it could be explained. Don't just latch on to the first idea. Then, crucially, think of tests. How could you systematically try to disprove each of those explanations? What survives that rigorous questioning, the hypothesis that resists your best attempts to knock it down, that's the one worth exploring further.
Challenge your own assumptions. Keep testing. Don't settle for easy answers. That feels like a fitting way to approach the profound, sometimes challenging wisdom of the I Ching.
I think so too. It encourages that ongoing engagement, that willingness to learn and adapt, which seems to be at the very heart of the Book of Changes itself.